All right, guys, we are live. Let's make sure I'm muted here. This is the first time we have been live in a very long time.
What are we doing? This feels so unusual.
I know. I hope that we are doing this correctly. Please let us know in the comments how the audio sounds. I did a quick live stream yesterday where I was just testing all this stuff out. I've literally forgotten how everything works. And if you're watching on fstoppers.com, click on the actual video, come over to YouTube, and you can join the live chat. I guess the first thing that I want to mention is that we're bringing Critique the Community back, but it's going to be bigger than ever before. For this contest and all previous contests, we have, just been giving away free tutorials that, are valued around $300. We want to do much bigger prizes. So we're going to do one critique a month for the next 12 months, and we're hoping we can get bigger and bigger prizes. For this very first one, we don't have any sponsors, so Patrick and we're going to put up $1,000 cash. We're then going to critique 20 images, and every single image we choose gets a free tutorial. So we're giving away 20 free tutorials rather than just 2 like we normally do.
And we've also picked a genre that hopefully everyone can participate in.
Yeah, so we're doing landscape photography in honor of Elia Locardi's Photographing the World Japan that is out. And we're also going to get Elia to be a guest judge. So we're hoping to raise the production value and everything of these upcoming critiques. And I don't know if we're going to do them live anymore. I know everybody watching right now is a subscriber to our live channel, so you guys are one of the few people who likes live content, but I think everyone else might prefer a more polished, edited, tighter, higher production value video.
And maybe we just have to come up with something else to do live if you want to hear our stories and ramblings. But I think for these bigger contests, especially with 20 images, I think it needs to be really tight and helpful if we want to make it about becoming a better photographer.
We were getting requests for a coronavirus update.
That's over with, right? There's no more.
I mean, dude, people are still talking about it.
I turned on CNN for the first time today, and that was the top story. It was about getting vaccines to children and how there's not enough to do it.
Really?
And I was like, man, I didn't know people were still vaccinating their kids at this stage.
Yeah,
But the number was like 200 people died under the age of 18 a year ago, and then today, maybe not died, maybe it's hospitalized. But today it was like thousands. So it's like a 10x number.
See, now you're bringing me down the rabbit hole. I'm gonna have to go look at the numbers and look at the
That's for another time and another show.
Yeah.
A lot has happened, so I'm sure throughout this critique we're going to update everybody on living in Puerto Rico, fatherhood, our parents' health, like all kinds of stuff.
They asked about your dad and yesterday, so I told like the 15 people that were in here what happened to your dad, and they all wished you guys well wishes. But then I told them there was, at least a little bit of good news with the video you showed me.
Yeah, so we can get into all that. All right, so we're switching things up a little bit. I have put the highest rated image at the end.
Okay.
I know a lot of you guys out there said, why are you giving it away and telling everyone up front? So the last image will win a free tutorial. Head over to fstoppers.com/store to check those out. I would highly suggest looking at Photographing the World Japan. Is it 5? Technically,
I can't even keep track.
But so you will win that if you're the last one. But then we're also going to do one random image. So do you want to do 1 through 9? Which image do you think?
9.
Number 9. So the last 2 images will be the winners of free tutorial.
In this critique, we really screwed up on this. I'll turn this off for a second. How long ago was this submitted?
August of last year.
Over a year ago.
Over a year. And so what happened was in August, the end of August, beginning of September, you went off the island for a few weeks. We were hit with a hurricane, and I was hunkered down here, like watching my yard flood and my roof become a 2-foot pool. And then as soon as the hurricane ended, I got off the island because my son was about to be born 3 weeks later. And then you came back, and we just literally had not seen each other for months. And then all of a sudden,
got out of the habit of it.
It just, we lost track.
Well, and I kept telling you, like, hey, man, these critiques, so they're just not getting that many views. Like, we got to do something to really up the production value and the excitement about these things. So we were waiting for Fujifilm to sponsor this one for quite a long time. We thought because of Photographing the World Japan, they were going to give us a camera. Elia was saying he thought we could get a camera. And then finally I was like, I cannot wait anymore.
Yeah.
We just have to do this. So,
well, and I also think you were surprised when I told you there was still a critique to judge.
yeah, I know. I didn't know.
So we had an open-ended critique, which is the one we're doing today is speed?
Speed.
Speed.
Yes.
So I think probably part of the problem was you thought everything was caught up. But we had this one last critique that we need to get through.
Yeah. So I am embarrassed and I am sorry. Let's go ahead and critique this first image.
All right.
So let me see. I think I've got
in some
it
ways
pulled up here. This was taken by Robert Merrill. I was walking around the yard, camera in hand as always, and came upon this curious little guy. He buzzed me, blah, 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 blah. This was taken with a 5D Mark IV 100 to 400 with a 1.4 teleconverter for an equivalent of 227 millimeters f8. Isn't that funny? This is f8, and look at how shallow the depth of field is from the front of this bird to the back.
What millimeter did you say this is?
An equivalent of a 227 millimeter. Or maybe he shot at 227, but then it has a 1.4 times teleconverter on top of that.
I would have thought this was, the lens went up to what? What was the range?
100 to 400.
I was thinking this was going to be like a 800 millimeter, or 600 millimeter lens, but
yeah.
Focal length.
Can you guess the shutter speed?
I'm going to say 1/2000.
So
ish.
I wanted to say something like that because I know it's a hummingbird and they're incredibly fast, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at its tail feathers, there's a lot of motion blur on that back tail, and that shouldn't be moving quite as fast, right?
Well, it's hard to say because if it's too fast, then the wings are suspended. So you probably want to find that shutter speed where the body isn't moving, but it's not so fast that the wings are just suspended, right?
Well, he shot at 1/250th of a second, and I think this looks pretty good. Like, it's incredibly sharp on the bird's eye, but then you've got just nice shallow depth of field fall off and nice motion blur on the tail, and then I also like the motion blur on the wings.
What do you think is that background? Like that, it almost looks studio-esque. It's like, it looks industrial, or what's the opposite of residential? It looks like a urban environment or something. It doesn't look like nature.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't
at this millimeter, maybe it could be absolutely anything.
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
Cool
it could be a car in the background or something. Very good, very good. Are you ready to rate it?
Is that thunder outside?
Always, man. Let's hope the power doesn't go out. 3, 2, 1.
I'm between a 3 and a 4, so maybe that's the perfect rating.
Yeah, 3.5 seems about right. I rated it 4, which is excellent. If you guys can remember our crazy rating scheme here.
3 is definitely belongs in your portfolio. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it's a solid image.
Yeah.
I always have a hard time rating wildlife because I think for the bird photographers, there's so much more behind the scenes that they know. How rare is this? Right. How difficult is this? Things like the color of the feathers, this specific species, like all these things.
You caught a yellow-bellied in fall? There's only 7 of those in North America.
Exactly. And so I never know how to judge on that.
Yeah.
We've seen in some incredible bird photography where they're picking up insects and breaking the water and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how crazy that stuff is either, but so I think for me, to be a 4 or a 5, it has to be just unbelievable. But like you said, I do love all of the different elements of motion blur throughout this,
Mm-hmm.
Like people always talk about leading lines and stuff, areas of contrast, zone systems. This has that with motion blur, It's like you go from super sharp to the most blurry to then slightly blurry, and then the background is not motion blur, but it's just blurred the most,
Yeah.
It's like there's all kinds of levels of clarity in this image, which I think is really cool.
Next up.
Did we learn anything more about that F-35 jet that went missing over Charleston, South Carolina?
They ended up finding it, and I think they said it. I could be totally wrong, but it flew like an additional 16 miles after the guy ejected. And,
I mean, that story
is nuts. Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine if that had hit downtown, any city, like any area with people, like it miraculously hit a lake, and people didn't really know. I think that day was really overcast and rainy, but it's still crazy to think that like a jet just coasted and crashed somewhere. Nobody really knew. But I guess what I'm asking is, did our government ever give, like, is it classified? And so they can't tell us anything? Like, they came out and said, we need your help finding this jet. And then I've not heard anything else about what went wrong. Is there an issue?
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
This jet had been delayed so long because there were so many issues. The F-35 is like the most advanced fighter jet ever, but it's been kind of plagued with all these problems. So
I read some statistic that was like 60% of the time they are down for maintenance, something like that. And it was like, oh, they only work 40% of the time or something really
I mean, this
horrible.
is not that jet, but this just made me think of that story that happened not too long ago.
Kind of similar to the animal photography. I don't know that much about fighter jet photography. I know this is a thing. A lot of photographers with long lenses will go out to these aviation shows and they'll just get a bunch of photos like this. So, I mean, I'm not even sure what it's called. But like the steam coming off this thing looks kind of cool, but the sky behind it is particularly boring.
Yeah.
And the lighting is particularly boring, but it's certainly an interesting composition, and it's sharp, it's correct exposure. But I don't know enough to be blown away by this. But once again, they could be like, oh my gosh, you captured the
retired
F-16 that has the smoke screen.
This is a Hornet that was given to Switzerland. Like they don't even fly those anymore.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting about this direction is to get the jets in the back, it always has to be leaving you, right? If this was coming towards the camera, one of the more interesting elements of the fighter jet you can't capture. But I wonder if that's like, I'm just thinking of things coming towards and away from the camera. If you had a car, a horse, or an animal running away, it's usually not as photographic as them coming towards you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is missing something because of that, but maybe fighter jets are the one object that always looks a little more interesting leaving you. But I do want to see more smoke or something in the back.
All right, let's rate it. 3, 2, 1.
I'm going to go 2.
That's what I went to. I don't think it's bad. I don't know how this is different than anyone else with a 400 millimeter lens who was also at that Blue Angel show, Yeah,
I mean, this all seems to be about like the gear. What lens do you have that allows you to get closer?
Well, let's see if he tells us what it is.
This is like the definition of spray and pray.
He didn't
right?
tell us. Taken at an air show in Scotland, so he doesn't tell us what lens.
Like when you have a long lens and you have it in continuous focus and the plane's doing all these crazy things and aren't you just blasting away hoping to get that one?
Yeah, but aren't you doing that with sports photography too, So.
Well, yeah, for sure. I just, I feel like with sports photography though, at least there's an art. So I've been on some of these Sports Illustrated shoots where I want to say there's an art to positioning yourself in the right place to anticipate the shot. But in many cases, they're not even doing that. They're stationed there. Like you are left end zone and you're responsible for getting the shot when it comes your way. So like if you're shooting a high school football game, you do have the freedom to move yourself to try to anticipate the best shot. Whereas this, there's no anticipating where the plane's going, right? It's flying every which way.
Right. And
no matter how far you run on the ground, it doesn't even make up for the space that it's taking in the air, right? Yeah. So if you position yourself here or there and that's 100 yards away, kind of insignificant, right? Where at least a sports player, if you're shooting for the Olympics and you're doing downhill skiing, you kind of maybe have the ability to place yourself somewhere and anticipate, it's kind of like wedding photography, where are you going to put yourself when the bride comes down the aisle? With this, it just feels like it's the luck of the draw, you know, like where you're going to shoot 10,000 images and hopefully one of those has a cool angle to it.
Yep. Watch your head. You're starting to go under the screen here. Next picture. I think you just need to slide left a little bit more.
I see what you're saying.
What type of car is this, Patrick?
This is a SS Viper in child blue.
Man, you sound like a real car nut.
Well, I used to paint cars, so I had a lot of these come in my shop.
Gotcha.
Does this say Cobra?
I don't know. I don't know what this is.
Either.
I don't know what this is. I do not particularly like this car. All right, are you ready to rate it?
I don't like child blue, but
Child blue. 3, 2, 1.
I'm between a 2 and a 3.
I don't like this photograph.
It has a lot that could make it cool, but yeah, I agree with you. This is a 2. Do you want me to critique first since I am changing my opinion?
Yes.
I believe I read something about this. This was a senior portrait, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of a cool concept, you know, like to actually do something not so posy.
Yeah.
And take out the...
Chevelle SS, shot for a senior session.
That's it. I wish he was... I want to say I wish he was looking at the camera, but maybe that would make it even worse. There's just something about his expression, and if it's a senior portrait, I feel like everyone's trying to look cool and tough, right? So if his arm was outside the door and he was like giving a smirk or something to make it feel more like a portrait. I'm saying this, but then as I envision it, maybe that wouldn't look as good either.
Yeah.
I feel like it needs to be more of a horizontal shot. I don't like the arrow, like the turn lane. It kind of makes it feel like he's not driving correctly. Like he's driving like people drive here in Puerto Rico, where they're not in either lane, and when you're turning, the guy behind you is about to run you over. So I feel like, he might still have his learner's permit.
This is a strange composition with it being vertical. It feels...
Well, it's kind of... Well, yeah, I guess it... Okay, yeah, it is vertical.
It feels to me like it needs to be a horizontal shot. I don't like that turn arrow on the ground. That looks weird. And then the trees behind the car are super ugly and the sky's ugly. So, like you said, I just want it to be a horizontal image. And it makes a lot more sense to me that it was a senior session. And I give a lot more lenience to photographs when I know, for example, if this was a wedding photograph and the couple was driving to the wedding, I'd be like, awesome job. Like, that's so cool that you captured that on the way to the wedding. And from their perspective, it's this incredible memory that's super valuable.
Yeah.
But if this was commercial photography and you set out today to get a shot of this Chevelle SS, I say you failed.
Yeah.
Because this is not up to the level that commercial photography needs to be. But for a senior session where you walked away with 200 images today and all these different locations, then it's fine. And I think this student and the family is probably going to really like it.
I don't know if you've been playing around in Photoshop with the generative fill.
I haven't at all. I don't even know the slightest idea about how it works, so I need to...
I mean, 99% of the time, I just select something and don't even type a keyword in. I just hit go.
Oh, you can do that?
Oh, that's like the preferred way to do it.
Okay.
You start typing in too much and it makes like cheesy clip art. Like, it looks bad.
Okay.
But if you type in nothing, it is unbelievable what it does.
Huh.
And so I'm just looking at, a lot of the upper left here. I've cropped this now so it's more of a horizontal shot. But, some of the areas that you might not like with the foliage and the trees would be so easy for Photoshop to fill that in. And it's kind of interesting because we have not done a critique since generative fill has even been available.
I
So
know.
you don't know anything about it. I've used it every day. I feel like now I can really give better critiques because you know what is possible. It's not imagine if.
But it's not even remotely photography anymore. It's like, at least in the past, I would take the photo, there'd be ugly trees in the background. Okay, now using Photoshop, I'm going to fix this ugly thing. Now it's just, you just highlight it and don't even tell it what you want, and it just, Photoshop is gonna make an image for you.
But if you look at this image, I'm talking about this highlight in the upper left.
Yeah,
I don't know if
that's
that's, maybe that's the most interesting part of the background. Maybe it's the worst part of the background. But if you fix just that, I mean, in the big scheme of this image, this is a vertical image, right? If you fix just that one area, you crop it and then fix that one area, you've only changed 10 or 20% of the image, right?
Yeah.
In landscape photography, as we've seen with a lot of these high-end photographers, like they're changing everything, you know? They're blending in time and they're doing long exposures, they're blurring.
I know.
Like it's still kind of technically done in the camera and then manipulated in Photoshop. The pixels are in their possession, but it's still just kind of as fake as making.
Oh, I know. It's just because it's that much easier now, it's just limiting the value of photography.
You know what I would like to see in this image is, this image feels like it'd be so cool as a senior portrait if it was filled with 2 or 3 of his other friends. And of course, you have to have them doing things that don't look stupid. Because 2 or 3, the more people you add to an image, the easier it is for one person to ruin. I just took family photos, and it's like every shot, somebody there has ruined it.
Yeah.
And I have to combine multiple images and mask somebody in to fix it.
Just highlight them and tell Photoshop, make them not look dumb.
Yeah, that's what I did to myself, and
Okay.
I was unrecognizable. But if you have this picture and you could have 2 buddies in there, it kind of makes it like, it makes it an image that I think this guy would value more, right? If your 2 best friends were in the car with you, and now it's this stylized image speeding down the road, and it represents you and your friends and not like this senior portrait that's kind of cheesy.
Sure, but you're not going to bring your friends along with you on a senior portrait.
I mean, maybe if this is the goal, like, I guess it depends if senior portraits now are about capturing as many types of images in a session or going out for like one big shot.
Because this can't be the one shot. You can hardly see the guy.
I mean, I don't know.
Let's move on.
Speaking of AI, as we pull this image up, somebody in the comments says, how are we going to weed out AI art from our contests? And it makes me think, like, should we even, like, that's the way people are going. You saw the one where the AI art just won this huge photo contest. And,
yeah, I don't, it's painful to admit it, but I have always been on the side of, I don't care how you made it, all I care about is the finished product.
Yeah.
So I don't care if it was shot on film or it was created in Photoshop. The final picture, print, art, whatever, that's all I care about. So it makes me uncomfortable to continue saying that now that AI is literally better than me at almost everything.
Yeah.
It's painful to say that still because I can literally just like type in some words and it will be better than anything I could shoot.
I have a couple AI videos in the works that I think will be really interesting for our channel. And one of them is going to be about copyright. And as I go down this rabbit hole, the conversation really seems to be about how much input does the human have on AI art. And at the moment, the Copyright Office and the laws say if AI art and computers are involved at all in making the final output, none of the input that you put in, like you directing it, really passes the threshold of making it copyrightable because a human did not create it. And I think that's kind of where we're drawing the line is if you use AI to augment the background of the last photograph, but you took the picture, it seems like you're kind of just manipulating the photo that you took. And not only did you direct the photo, but you actually hit the shutter and like you took it and now you're manipulating it. But if you say guy driving down the street in a Chevy, whatever, and you put all the keywords in and that spits out, no matter how well you directed that, you weren't the one who, put the rubber to the road, so to speak. You could tell a painter to paint something perfectly, but then when they do it, like your hand really wasn't involved in that painting at all, right? even though you gave them all the directions. You gave them the recipe. So I think that's kind of where the line is going to be, is how do you say that this person won the contest and is entitled to these prizes when he gave the recipe and directed it, but if it was completely 100% exported from the software, that is very different than you starting with an image. Like I've been doing a lot where I take an image that I've photographed and do image to image, where the final AI is not using prompts, but rather it is using the image that I took. And that's really interesting because the final image, depending on how you manipulate all the different settings, you can get it to look almost identical, or you can get it to just be a really interesting variant of what the original photograph was.
Yeah, you've been showing me some of the stuff you've been creating, and it's unbelievable. You've got to create some YouTube videos on how you're doing it.
I don't know, like on one level, I'm using Stable Diffusion because I feel like it gives me way more options than Midjourney. And on the low end of it, it seems like it's just adding a filter like you would do in Photoshop, where, okay, every pixel is manipulated. They're all unique pixels. But side by side, you could tell, it's kind of like Shepard Fairey and the Hope poster. You can tell that that picture of Obama came from this still photograph, without a doubt. But it is a totally different thing, right? And unfortunately, that case never went to court. They settled out of court, so we don't know how that would have been ruled, whether or not that was a variant and enough change happened. But through AI, I can either take one of your photos and make it just slightly different to where it's truly AI, but it kind of looks like a filter. Or I can push the slider so far that now it is a landscape in Puerto Rico that is, it looks like something you took, but now all of a sudden the mountains, everything's so different that you would never recognize that your image was the precursor to this photo.
Yeah.
And so depending on where that falls, one just seems like, all right, you're just kind of adjusting a pre-existing image. And then the other one is, okay, this is like, there's no user input, even though the original input was a photograph.
So when are you making this video?
I am still working on it because it takes so long to make these images, but soon.
Okay.
I hope to have it done in this month. I'd like to do it this month for sure.
Next image is this F1. I'm not a big racing guy. I've tried to get into the racing a little bit. Cars just going around in a circle, or, mew, 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 mew. I just cannot do it. But then again, I don't really like any sports, so.
Mike Kelly's really into this.
I know, it's so strange.
He will get up early in the morning to watch this and go to France to watch, Italy, and he's super into it. And we share the same love for tennis, and I love watching tennis. I feel like that's a sport I could sit there and watch. But racing is the same way, and make a lot of people mad. Soccer is like that too. I can't sit at a bar and watch a soccer match, and then an hour later, no one scored, and I have such a hard time of understanding what brilliant play happened that didn't result in some identifiable outcome.
Yeah, I agree.
And I feel like this is kind of the same thing too. It's like, okay, somebody cut somebody off and they did the lap and they beat the time and but it's hard for me to really know what I'm watching, I guess.
All right, let's rate it. 3, 2, 1.
I give this a 4. I think I love how the camera's been panned and all of the lines are so sharp, and some of them look very graphic, like the green, white, and red stripes, but then the people above it are a little more abstract. Maybe if you could tilt this and everything was perfectly straight and even, I would like it graphically even more, which you could do with AI now very easily. Remember when you twist an image and you have the corners missing? Now you just fill in the corners and you have an image.
Right. This was taken by James Parsons. He said he was shot at 1/80th of a second, interesting, with a 100 to 400 millimeter lens, car going 160 miles an hour around a corner. The reason why I give it 3 and not 4 is just because it looks like every F1 picture I know of. Like, nothing about this seems that exciting. 3 stars is still good, a solid image. It could be in your portfolio, but what is blowing your mind with this? And I guess it doesn't have to blow your mind. 4 stars is excellent. You think it's excellent.
You do know how difficult this technique is. Have you tried panning shots before in your photographic career? Did you ever sit and make a slow shutter with a long telephoto?
I've certainly done it before, never with a car going 180 miles an hour.
I don't know that I've ever taken a really good photo of this. This is like one of the hardest photographic techniques.
What?
I think so.
Really?
To get everything sharp and to match the speed perfectly and to like, I've failed at this.
I feel like you'd have 1,000 chances throughout the day. The cars just keep going. You just go brr, brr, brr.
I mean, you're always the one kiteboarding, but if you take a telephoto camera out next time, you have a buddy who kiteboards with you.
Yeah.
Just try, and maybe they're not moving fast enough. I don't know.
Yeah, they'd
Just
be going really
try
slow.
I mean, the faster they go, is this technique easier, or the slower they go? Maybe it's just not as pronounced.
Well, the other question is, I don't think this person's with a 400 millimeter lens handheld, right? Do you think they're on a tripod? Are they on a monopod?
Did they tell you anything about this image?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you had some kind of stabilizer or tripod and you could pivot it perfectly, that would help to keep it from moving everywhere. But
yeah, I have just imagined that's what he did, but I'm just guessing.
I mean, there are street photographers who do that all the time, a panning shot. I mean, Pi does it with his wedding stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I just, man, I've never gotten this tech. I've never really attempted it that much, but when I first got into photography, it was like, oh, wow, how do I do that trick? And I remember playing around with it for a handful of times and just never getting anything that looks that good.
All right, moving on.
We all watch F1 for the wrecks, right?
All racing, the only exciting part is the wrecks. Speaking of racing, so this shot, let me go full screen while I read about it. This shot was taken by Mate Pindro. Lando Norris going flat out at Silverton GP 2022. Guys, remember when you submit for critiques going forward, we want just a little bit more information, you know? Like I would love to know what lens you're using, what's your shutter speed, are you on a tripod, how did, you know, were you able to do this handheld? All that stuff is super interesting.
So for the contest moving forward, I have specifically put in that you have to include, I think I put 100 words.
Okay.
So you need to definitely give us some backstory. Maybe we should make it mandatory that the technical stuff's all included too. Just because it's a bummer when you have a really cool image and you don't know how it was taken or what to critique or how somebody, a lot of these critiques are also so viewers out there might know how they too could make an image like that.
Yeah.
So even if you hate what the two of us are saying, you can walk away saying like, oh, that bird shot was shot at 600 millimeter and not at 100 millimeter.
Here's the question. Do you like this shot better or worse than the previous?
I like this shot better. And I just rated the last one 4, so I kind of feel like in a rock and a hard place.
All right, let's rate it. 3, 2, 1.
I got to go 4.
I'm in between 3 and a 4 on this one. Like, I like this one better. But at the same time, I have to admit, it's not a super sharp photograph. Like, no part of it is tack sharp, but that's kind of the artistic element of it as well, I guess. It definitely shows speed, and that was what this critique is all about.
I kind of wish that, is there another car behind him, or is this might just be one? I kind of want to see the other cars coming behind him, you know? Because this has so much emotion in it of racing, and I see people cheering even though I can't make out a single person in this image. Like maybe just this black spot up here in the corner. It just feels like somebody putting their hand up and like cheering them on, and in some ways, like I just praised how much I like the symmetrical lines in the previous image. I think I like this one for the complete opposite reason. Like the whimsical movement, like all of the colors have this cool multi-tonality to them. The yellows have the red in it, the teals have the white in it, you know, the blacks have the purple and the red at the bottom. It's just got a lot of motion and energy. I definitely prefer this photo to the last one.
Next up, man, how do you think they shot this airplane in a storm like that?
They probably prepared for 6 months, had a bunch of clearance, watched their diet, went up with NASA, and they probably shot this on the edge of orbit.
The edge of space. In case you guys don't know what Patrick's talking about, check out Blair Bunting's newest photo shoot. He got to go up in the U-2 spy plane in a spacesuit made just for him. And I almost got to film this shoot, and then it didn't work out at the last second. And there's no way like I could have gone in the airplane, nor is there any way I would have wanted to. It took hours in this plane to reach low Earth orbit, and like you can barely move. It just sounded like hell on earth to me. But what an incredible life experience.
Well, in reading his blog or seeing the video that they produced, it's hard to know how much hyperbole there is in it, but it sounded like it was very dangerous. Like there's a chance that things could go wrong and you could die. Maybe all photographers like to talk about how difficult their shoots are, but the imagery looks a lot like this, very stylized, but from the online photography community, it was very polarized, which reminds us of the time we did the video with Blair Bunting with the Aventador.
Yeah.
Where we shot this like one-of-a-kind Lamborghini at the time, like it was like the first Aventador in the United States or something. And then he and his retoucher came up with a stylized image like this. You can find it on our YouTube channel. It's like in the first year or two of videos we did. And man, the people that were most vocal hated it, right? They were like, they ruined the whole image with the post-processing. A lot of the comments on his images, which look a lot like this, were the same way. People were like, you got to go up into orbit in this really rare experience. You could have just shown the images as they were taken, and that would have been mind-blowing. But then I think a lot of us who are like the commercial side of photography, you say, well, you could do that, but I want to make my images look unbelievable on top of having it.
The reason why they invited him and the reason why they built him a $500,000 spacesuit
Was not to take snapshots.
Right. Every pilot who goes up there takes snapshots.
Yeah.
They wanted a Blair Bunting photograph. That's
Right.
the only reason he was asked to do it. So.
And I think a lot of people online don't know Blair. They don't know the story, even though he wrote a huge article about it. It wasn't him just going up and doing his own thing.
Right.
Like, let me go and edit these pictures however I want. It was a very planned out, purposeful exploration.
Right.
But enough about Blair, because that's not who took this photo.
This was taken by Jan Eid, something like that. And this person says, they are not rich, nor a fighter jet pilot. The jet was located at a military base and was grounded. Editing was involved. The issue that I have with this, I've seen some amazing jet photographs where they just take a picture of a grounded jet and then make it look like it's flying, and they do a really good job.
Yeah.
The reason why I don't feel like this looks very realistic is because you have this super harsh sunlight. I mean, you can see it on the tail fin, but then you've got the jet flying in this super stormy cloud looking thing, so you wouldn't expect there to be harsh sunlight. And then of course you would expect there, like in this much clouds, you would expect there to be clouds kind of going over the wingtips and everything, and you don't really see any of that. So for all of those reasons, I feel like this particular edit feels fake to me.
Yeah, I don't know. You've seen some really weird lighting scenarios and situations where the sun is just peeking through a cloud enough to hit the tail, but it still looks dark behind them. Or, you know, in Lightroom, you're able to take the blues and make them really dark. And even though this could be kind of more natural than what you're saying, like the way it was edited makes, I mean, Blair did this with his images. I think he embellished and boosted a lot of some of these like warm colors that wouldn't have been in space. And I remember people critiquing him over that, but I don't know what his post-processing looked like, and I know that he sends it off to a retoucher many times that will add a ton of stuff. But it's very possible that some of these elements are there, and if you just massage the file enough with all the different sliders that you have, you can produce something that looks unnatural to the untrained eye.
Next.
Well, we never rated this.
Oh, let's do it. 3, 2, 1.
2?
Yeah, I just feel like this isn't quite good enough for a professional portfolio.
Man, if you had like 20 of these images, I feel like it would be pretty crazy.
I think, honestly, the only thing it really needs is you've just got to add some clouds going across those wingtips. I think that would make it look so much more realistic.
The other thing, too, is the lights. You know, the lights are visible, but the only way to get the lights visible would be a pretty low light situation, right?
Yeah.
If you had light hitting the wing like that.
Yeah, so it'd have to be like moonlight creating that shadow on the tail, which I suppose is possible, but it's
the moon here, like we've had a full moon, maybe all in North America. I don't know how that totally works. It's like the hemisphere or something, but the moon the last few days in Puerto Rico, it's been crazy. I just walk outside and I'm like, man, I can see everything.
Yeah.
Definitely wouldn't want to do anything sketchy at night the last few nights.
Next up.
Somebody downstairs is not having a good time.
Well, we've got my 2-year-old, and then we're watching our friend's 6-month-old. So one of them is at least crying. Let's go full screen. This is super cool. You know, you're constantly trying to find that perfect shutter speed that's going to give you sharp enough faces but blurry enough everything else to really capture that speed. Do you know if the photographer told us what those settings were?
No, I'm going to guess they did not.
This was taken by Patrick. Oh, he did tell us. This is Usain Bolt
Anyone
of
out there
Jamaica.
want to guess before?
Well, I'm watching us on the live stream,
Yeah.
and there seems to be a massive delay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how, but it appears like the delay has been growing and growing as we've been filming. This was in 2017. I want you to guess, Patrick. What is the shutter speed of this image?
The shutter speed of this image is going to be 1/80.
Wasn't there another image that we just did 1/80? The car?
Was that 1/80?
Yeah, I think so. This is 1/30th.
Whoa. Have you done many shoots where like you shoot something at 130 with like a 70 to 200, a 24 to 70, and you're at the 70 side of things, and you kind of forget the ruling of like 1 over the shutter speed?
Sure.
And then you get home and you're like, I should be able to handhold 1/30th. But
Well, especially with like
they're all soft.
vibration reduction and stuff. You should be
Yeah,
able
maybe
to.
that's off, or like you didn't do it correctly, or I don't know. Like that happened to me recently with a shoot a couple months ago, and I was like, these are all a lot softer than I thought. And then I look and I'm like, 130? I normally wouldn't go that low, but I should also be able to hand hold that at like 650, 70 millimeters. Doesn't seem that crazy, especially with VR, but I don't know if the VR was on or off. But to do it in this environment where you're panning and the stakes are the highest, you're at, I don't know if this is the Olympics or this is just like a, prerequisite, like a training camp or something, but
Here's the other interesting thing about this photograph is so much of it is luck, because look at the faces of almost every single person. Their face is blurry just because, wherever their stride happens to be, are they moving up, down, forward, back? I guess nobody's moving backwards, but you get the point. The only face that's really in focus is the one that everyone cares about, Usain Bolt. So,
I mean, do you think they've added a little extra sharpening? I mean, if I zoom in, he's not 100% sharp, but he is the sharpest, which is great. If it was any other person, it would be a ruined photograph, right? If the guy in the green or red were sharp, you would be like, okay.
Who's that guy?
Unless he won the race
Later.
and the story involved him coming from behind.
Right.
That'd be the only way that it would be of value.
Yeah, so I think there's some skill involved here. I think this photographer had done a million tests. He knew that 1/30th of a second would give him the perfect shot in the absolute perfect conditions, but the perfect conditions are impossible to manage yourself, so you literally spray and pray, as you like to say. He took hundreds of photos, and oh my gosh, I got one as Usain Bolt was pulling ahead, and he's the one that's in focus. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Are you ready to rate it?
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1. 4 stars. We talk a lot about, having celebrities in your photograph or having like very known events or historical moments in photographs, and it can kind of take a mediocre photograph and take it to this world-class level. I feel like this is a great example of this. If this was a middle school track meet and Usain Bolt was your daughter, this photo would be worthless and it should not go in your portfolio. It would be 2 stars.
Yeah.
But you put the most famous sprinter in the history of the world in it, and now all of a sudden, like, you get on the cover of Sports Illustrated or something with a shot like this.
I'm sure we're always going to have to keep going back to AI art because it's here to stay and it's disrupting the industry so much. But it makes me wonder if images like this become, I guess, more valuable. Like, is there a bigger divide now to where a lot of the images that we've seen as we scroll backwards, like of a plane, of a driver that you don't really know who they are, another plane, a bird, like none of this stuff really matters in a historical standpoint. But this shot is the first one that kind of does. Like, again, this might not be an important race, but you can't make this image with AI. A lot of the other ones
What do you mean you can't?
You can't make this image of him actually neck and neck with the U.S. runner.
Because it's an event. Like,
it's an
this
event.
thing
It's
happened.
a real person. You can make a piece of art that represents this.
Okay.
If you look at like trial sketches of some murderer who's in court and they didn't allow cameras, AI can redo that probably better, right? You will now have a graphical representation of that event. But when it comes to real news or like real weddings, real events, it makes me wonder if as more editorial art goes into the realm of artificial art, it kind of like leaves this gap to where the bad or average art that we used to find value in because it's all we had kind of dissipates. And now you have all this AI art, but then now you have a very select number of images like this where it's the best Getty image of the Olympics, of that winning moment, And as photographers probably stop pursuing photography because there's this huge divide and it's so hard to be an editorial photographer, there's probably going to be less photographers. And as there's less photographers, there's probably less of them that will rise to the top to take this kind of imagery. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's going to be more photographers ever in the history of the world as time goes on.
Oh.
That's certainly what's happened with cameras being more accessible. But it just seems like as still art and stock photography and editorial photography and images that you might need as a placeholder for your news article, as all of that is just replicated by cheap AI art and it serves the purpose, and maybe it's even better, as you would say. It's doing a better job than what you and I could do in the past.
Yep.
It sure feels like that's going to be discouraging for people to enter into this field. And it's not just photography. I mean, you can make this argument about art, about music, about all kinds of things. But seeing an image like this with an identifiable face and you saying how important a celebrity being in your portfolio could be in distinguishing you from everyone else, like that might be more important now than ever. Although, with some of the images I've been creating where I can make a celebrity look almost exactly like, the AI art look exactly like a celebrity, maybe people won't value it as much either because they'll just say, like, I don't know if that's really...
So everything you said is wrong, is that what you're saying?
Well, it just depends on how we tackle it in the future. I don't know what people are going to say.
Interesting. So as some of you know, I am a kiteboarder myself. And the funny thing is, like, jumping and doing a grab like this is quite slow. Like at the top of these jumps, it's the opposite of speed, but I will not take off any points for that. Still an interesting image.
Yeah, it is funny. Looking at this image, my mind immediately just goes into like super fast, drift.
Yeah.
It does feel like slower, but if you're not familiar with the sport, maybe this feels really crazy.
Yeah.
In terms of speed and everything.
Let me see what this person says about it. If they have any info. This was taken by Maurizio Di Felice, a kite surfer in Stinso Harbor of Sweden. Interesting. D610 Sigma 70 to 300 at 300 millimeters, 1/2000th of a second. You know, a lot of times it's difficult to capture these shots with anything of interest at all in the background because the kiteboarders are just kind of all over the place, and you can't really tell them where to jump. It's too difficult. But this photographer got lucky, and they got this little island and the lighthouse in the background, so that adds a little bit of interest. There's nothing going on in the sky, which is too bad. Nothing that Photoshop Content Aware couldn't generate. Put some fighter jets back there or something.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty good. You want to rate it?
What if the whole lower part of this image is generated?
That could be.
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
You going 3?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm rating this as a 2 because I have gone out and shot kiteboarding 10, 20 times, and I always wind up with a handful of images like this, where if I threw it in Lightroom and just boosted the contrast, and you know, this shot's pretty common, you know.
yeah.
For me, images that I like are images where the kite is visible. It's not just the string going off into the distance, which makes it really
Lines,
difficult.
bro. Lines.
Lines, sorry. Which makes it difficult because to get the kite in the shot either requires everyone to be really small in the distance, or it requires a wide angle lens, or it requires them to be doing some trick where the kite is really low. And so you almost have to direct kiteboarders in order to get the shot that you want. But I like the spray. I like the intimacy of being close and having them almost run over you, and it's kind of scary to do that. When you're just on the shore shooting with a telephoto lens, I just feel like you get a shot like this all the time.
So I agree with everything you've said. The reason why I give this a 3 and not a 2 is I think a lot just comes down to the kiteboarder himself. I mean, it's almost like this Renaissance painting or something. The look on his face, the hair. It's just this really interesting portrait. So I know if I were to jump up and do that grab, I would look super goofy. I wouldn't be able to look at the camera. Like, it just...
You just like the model. You like the guy.
He's beautiful. I've never been more attracted
He's Swedish,
to a man
right?
in my life.
Is this Norway? Where was this?
Sweden.
Okay.
Um,
Do you dislike the man in the sky more? Like taking out of the like...
what?
If you crop this, you like this less, right? Of it just being pure white?
I don't know. Probably. Yeah, I do like that less. I like it more like this. But I also agree with everything you said. It would be better if the photographer was in the water with a waterproof case and was shooting up at him, jumping over. I think those images are more interesting every time. But I feel like for what this is well above your average telephoto kiteboard picture. Let's move on. More water sports. This one was taken by Leon Brower. Care to guess the shutter speed?
1/80.
I actually might have guessed that this was fake. I think I might have guessed this was taken at 1,000th of a second and then
cut out.
You know,
like
directional blur was added because it almost looks too perfect. But no, he says 1/30th of a second. Took a lot of pictures experimenting with different shutter speeds. Only a handful were actually tack sharp. Interesting.
So some of these sports, I get confused with the names. Paramotoring and windsurfing and I'm thinking the ones with the kites where you jump off they all have names that are very similar, and this is no different. This is kite surfing?
No, this is windsurfing.
Windsurfing. Kite surfing, windsurfing,
Kite surfing is what we just looked at.
Well, that was kiteboarding.
That's the same thing.
Wait, kiteboarding and kite surfing are the same thing?
Yeah.
What's the one where you jump off a mountain? It's like paragliding, parasailing, paramotoring. Like, they're all so similar.
Parasailing is when you're being pulled by a boat.
Okay.
Paramotoring is when you have a fan on your back. Paragliding is when you run off the cliff.
But you have a glider.
No.
No, you have a parachute.
Parachute.
What's the glider?
Hang gliding.
Hang gliding, okay. There's like a quiz at the end of this. I mean, I don't know. Like, if they're all spelled out, they do all make sense. But when you have to just throw a name to it, I struggle with that.
Well, now there's a new one, which is winging.
It's just
which is this little like handheld wing that you see people on a foil board on, and then they just have this little thing in their hand rather than the harness and everything.
I don't know how foiling totally works without being pulled or without having a motor or without having a wing. But the other day I went to this wedding in Old San Juan, and I saw this guy, and he was just doing this like wing flap thing, and he was just riding a foil in on a wave that was dying. But he was like somehow able to just flex
it's called pumping. You can kind of jump.
It's pretty wild looking.
Yeah.
So this is windsurfing.
Correct.
Windsurfing.
All right, let's rate it. 3, 2, 1. I like this.
This might be my favorite image of the
I like this a lot.
I think it's just the color scheme. Like, it just is peaceful and beautiful. And
yeah. The blur on this, it's just so perfect, and I'm glad he admitted it took a lot of attempts to get it to look this good, because it looks almost too good. Like there's some funny business going on.
This is one of those things where if it's 80% there and you do add a little bit of blur and then brush it in where you need it, is that so bad? I mean,
or what if you just open a blank document in Photoshop and you just type in windsurfing with blurry background? This is what is built by Photoshop.
It's totally different.
Oh, totally different, huh?
First of all, it probably wouldn't get a correct word like volt on there, you know? Like, that's one way. Just start looking at text.
Yeah.
Text, eyes,
yeah, but in
hands,
6 months from now, they'll probably figure all that out too.
It is. I mean, it is so wild to look at what you can produce today versus what you could produce a year ago.
Well, do you remember my video on how AI is going to destroy photography? And I showed an example of a series of photographs that were Elon Musk working at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And you could tell it was Elon Musk, but he was all warped out, and his hands were claws, and he had French fries coming out of his hair. He looked crazy, and I said, "This is what it looks like today, but who knows in 6 months or a year from now?" And we're already to the point. You were showing me photos that you made completely in AI, and I was like, "Oh, that's definitely a real photograph. That's definitely real."
I have a video coming out where we're in the process of filming it, where we're going to let people decide if these are real photos or fake. They're all in the style of Martin Scholler and Peter Hurley, so pretty tight headshots with stylized lighting. It is great. Like, it looks so freaking good. It looks so good. Like, I know some of the things to look for, but I've also curated it to where, like, I'm running them over and over to get the absolute best output. But you have to judge it by the best output, right? You're not going to judge it by like some mediocre output.
Sure, because you're not going to take your worst photos from the shoot.
Yeah,
and
when you look at these photos, it's like I've got people look like celebrities that I don't know that. I mean, you thought that one was real because it was a celebrity.
I know.
And then I have others of just made up people, and it's man, it is. I don't know.
Let's move on.
So this is the winning image, which means this is the second winning
cool.
image. So we're here.
Well, I think my two favorite images are going to be winners. So send me a private message, Lee Morris, on fstoppers.com. Let me know which tutorial you want at fstoppers.com/store, and I will send that to your account. Let's look at this one full screen.
And we know this isn't AI because all of the text
makes sense.
Makes sense, right. Although their helmets and bodysuits do look a little futuristic, but that is the sport.
This was taken by Patrick Kachefe. The England men's track cycling pursuit team compete at the 2022 Commonwealth Games. This event is usually a good opportunity for some panning shots. Do you care to guess the shutter speed, Patrick?
I got it wrong last time, so I'm going to go 1/30th.
1/10 of a second.
1/10.
And here's the interesting thing. Oh, I guess he has to, but F11. I was going to say that's so wild that he would stop down, but you have to. He's shooting at ISO 50, And there's enough light in there, I guess, just to get a correct exposure, you have to stop down to f11 at 155 millimeters. So yeah, like, is that by hand? Is that with a tripod? That would be interesting to know.
I wonder if, so many people don't like to shoot at f22 because of diffraction and all of that, but when you're doing these panning shots, is that even a consideration?
Maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, I can't imagine this shot is that sharp. He's shooting at 200 millimeters at 1/10 of a second. It can't be sharp.
I see here?
What, the dust spot?
Little dust spot.
That just shows it's legit.
There's another one up here in the other top corner, so what if the AI art starts adding dust spots?
I bet it will. I bet it will.
Am I centered here? No.
All right, let's rate it. 3, 2, 1.
Do I do a 5?
I mean, I'd consider a 5 on this. This is my favorite image of the critique. I'm not offended if this, if you want to consider this a world-class image. I'm in between a 4 and a 5.
I think it is. Like, it's just beautiful. It's framed so well. The 3 riders all in the same pose. The movement, the color. Like, this is a shot that we've been talking about going to the Sphere to see this U2 concert.
Yeah.
Like, this is something where I could just see this being, ultra wide. I don't even know what you call it. It's like IMAX times 10 or something, where, like, all of this is just moving. These guys are just going through the middle of the screen, but, like, all of these blurred pixels or something, it would be kind of cool to see something like that. But I think you could print this in a lobby. You could print this in a hotel room. You could print this on your wall. If you're a racer, this is just a cool image. And I've never seen anything like this. I mean, we've seen a bunch of panning shots in this critique that were all, I think, 3 stars. Maybe you rated a few of them lower, but there's just something, there's this this intangible thing that to me makes this stand up above everything else. You gave it a 4?
Yeah, but I'm not offended by a 5. What did you give it?
I gave it a 5.
You gave it a 5. All right. Well, that wraps up this critique. It's good to be back. I don't know that we've decided yet if the next critique or critiques going forward are going to be live or not. Somebody said, why don't you film it live and then edit it into something a little tighter? We could do that as well.
How would we do? Well, if it's live, it's live.
Well,
it'd be
it's 2 different YouTube channels,
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting if there was a way. There's just no way to do it. I'm thinking if you could release the polished one and then, like, as a bonus, release the live.
Well, I think the whole point is they want to see it and, like, talk trash to us while we go.
The hardest part is trying to figure out how to have guests come in and critique with us in an easy way, because this setup is so complicated.
I know.
That to try to bring in a celebrity guest or, if they come and visit us, it's easy. So we need more people to come to Puerto Rico. But, man, there's a lot. Like, we should do an update on what it's like. I mean, we're about to go into our 5th year living in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
A lot has changed. We've had houses and the business and, investing. The boat. Like, there's just so many things that have changed. I mean, I feel like I've been traveling a lot and traveling with a baby and a dog. Like, it's just so difficult. Like, there's so many things that I feel like are unique to this last year, for me at least. We've now not been living together for 2 years, I believe. We've seen the house that we used to live in go up for sale, and maybe it's not for sale. And, we have relationships with friends that, that live in that house. And I don't know. It's just a lot has happened. And then you got the COVID stuff. You got the political environment. Like, I feel like you got the AI world. Like, so much of our world it's never been changing faster. At least that's how I feel. But maybe everybody feels like that in their own generation. If you were alive when the first, like, phone came into your house, everyone would be like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's crazy. But, you also think about humans landing on the moon. That's one of the most insane things.
Didn't that just happen recently or failed? Wasn't China or something? There was some moon story recently. I have been so busy that I hardly can keep up with everything.
India landed on the moon? I didn't think it was humans, though. I thought they just a rover landed on the moon or something.
Is that it?
I don't know.
It's still
maybe I'm very
we
wrong.
haven't been back to the moon.
And aliens.
Oh my gosh, the aliens.
I'm getting...
That's all you've been talking about.
I'm getting so deep into these aliens, man. David Grush. I am just obsessed with the alien stuff. So, yeah, I mean, we do have a lot to talk about. I don't know that anything we just mentioned has anything to do with Fstoppers or photography.
No, it doesn't, but maybe, I'm just thinking if the critique moves back to the original channel, maybe the live channel with our 7,000 subscribers here could become just like...
the bullshit.
Yeah, and then we're 6,000 people away from hitting 1 million on the Fstoppers channel. So if any of you out there subscribe to this channel but don't subscribe to the original channel, definitely do that, because we'll have to throw some kind of big party or do something when we finally hit 1 million subscribers. I feel like we've been trying to do this for like 2 years now.
I know.
And it's just been going so slowly. But
I know. It's awful. We are so bad at YouTube. And here's the funniest thing ever. Patrick made a video that wasn't even good. I don't even remember what it was. And Patrick just all of a sudden decided to talk shit on like this group chat I'm on with Patrick and a few other buddies about how like, oh, maybe it was like somebody on YouTube commented about how Patrick does good YouTube videos, but Lee just is lazy and sits behind his desk. And Patrick screenshotted it and was like, oh my God,
they have a point.
Yeah. And then it was like 2 hours later, I released the most successful video in Fstoppers history that I happened to make in like 3 hours. It was, I opened up a ink cartridge, and this video got like 6 million views in a week or something. It was by far the most successful video we've ever made. I think that video has made over $10,000 in YouTube ad revenue. I don't think we've ever made that much on ad revenue before.
I view it as you read that comment and took it to heart.
I was inspired.
And you said, you know what? I'm going to show up that reader, and I'm going to shut Patrick's mouth, and I'm going to like make a good video about the conspiracy of the printer world.
And I did it lazily at this desk.
Well, you went outside, and one thing about that video is you're like cracking open the printer cartridge.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're out like on some cobblestone that you put in your garden. And I just keep thinking like, what would Katie say when all that ink just like oozes out into like, I mean, luckily it'd be like a $5 replacement, you know, tile or something.
Oh, you think it would stain an outdoor piece of tile?
Oh yeah, I mean, maybe not forever, but I was thinking like, if it was a tile that was grouted and installed, it would have been horrible. I thought it was just a patio stone that leads out into a walkway or something. But I was just watching you do this, and I was like, what if this thing just starts gushing ink everywhere?
I just assumed that I could just wipe it up, but maybe that's not true.
Yeah, I don't know.
Luckily, ink cartridges have no ink in them. That was the moral of the video. They literally just have a piece of foam inside, and the foam is hardly even soaked with ink.
Yeah, I've used an inkjet, laser jet printer for so long.
Yeah.
And those cartridges are so expensive, but once you buy it, it just like runs for years. And then you're like, and the problem is here, I don't think they ship them here. So I have to go back to the States or put one in a luggage every...
What?
The last laser jet cartridge would not ship to Puerto Rico.
Really?
Maybe it's changed because I order one every 2 years, but...
Well, you know, the thing that I do when stuff won't ship here, I just buy it off eBay. Because you just buy it from an individual person, and they don't abide by the battery rules and everything, and then they'll ship it here.
Yeah.
But the funny here is, I know nobody cares about this at all, but you know, something they won't ship here on Amazon are anything with batteries. Like you cannot get a AA battery sent here. They will not ship it. But what's weird is they will ship a camera that has a battery in it.
I just ordered a bunch of Amazon Prime batteries, AA's, AAA's.
Really?
Yeah, I think what they're doing is finally, like since Maria, I think we must have a warehouse in Puerto Rico now.
Okay.
And I think they're sending them by boat and stocking a warehouse.
Okay.
And certain things like batteries for cameras are not in that warehouse.
Okay.
But then there's other batteries and stuff that are.
Well, yeah. So I've tried to get like the little circular batteries that fit in air tags. Yeah. You know, like that's not starting a fire. Amazon will not ship that.
I just ordered one of those.
Okay, maybe they've recently changed.
Yeah.
But a buddy of mine just said he went on Amazon, bought a lithium golf cart battery that's like 300 pounds, and he said it showed up in 24 hours.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
there's some weird shipping stuff. Like we have to do a video soon for gravity backdrops because now Mac Group is selling gravity backdrops in the United States. So if you want one of the cool backdrops that we use a lot of times, you can get those in the States. They can't ship easily to Puerto Rico. And I'm like, that's weird because they're originally
huge.
Well, they're these tubes, but I've been buying them from the source in Eastern Europe. I forget what country he's in, but he's just shipped some, and they show up in like 3 or 4 days.
That's crazy.
And so they looked into it, and they were like, we don't know how this is possible, but we can ship them from Eastern Europe to Puerto Rico in half the time and a third of the price. Whereas if it comes from the States, it's like, and I'm like, what? But we're part of the States. Like, how could it possibly go halfway across the world and be cheaper and faster? And they're like, we don't know. So there's some really weird shipping things like that where I order stuff from China and it seems to show up really quick to Puerto Rico, but then you order stuff in China from China in the States and you wait, like, you forget that you ordered it. Yeah. And it shows up like 6 months later in like some raggedy box.
Right.
And you're like, oh yeah. So I don't know.
Well, guys, I think that wraps up this critique. If you have any awesome landscape photography, join our next critique at fstoppers.com/contest. It's going to be hopefully the biggest contest we've ever done before. The winner, we haven't yet decided how we're going to gauge the winner. Is it going to be the highest rated? Is it going to be our favorite? Is it going to be a random chosen? We'll let you know later.
Yeah.
But we're going to give them $1,000 cash. And then every single other picture that we have in the critique wins a free tutorial. So we're putting our money where our mouth is.
We aren't going to say how they can spend the cash, obviously, but wouldn't it be kind of cool if they had to spend the cash on the next photograph? And it's like, especially landscapes would be cool because they get to travel to that location and be like, I took this picture with the winnings. Maybe $1,000 is hardly enough to like.
$1,000 isn't enough to do that, but if we can get. My hope for this is that we could get this rolling where people are excited about this every month. The prizes get bigger and bigger. I mean, if we could get the prizes up to like $5,000 a month and you just know, all right, it's the first of the month, let's go see what the new Fstoppers contest is, then we could do something like that where for this, the winner of the next contest is going to get an all expense paid trip to go take the photo of their lifetime or whatever. I don't know, but $1,000, we're not there yet.
Yeah, maybe if you're in Europe or somewhere where travel is a little easier, but it's $1,000 just to leave the States.
Yeah.
So,
guys, thanks for watching. fstoppers.com/contest. We will see you soon.